Resolute Square.
There was also maintained what was called an enemies list, which is rather extensive and continually being updated.
Democrats want Republicans dead.
Where I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and I wouldn't lose any voters, okay?
The women with the least likelihood of getting pregnant are the ones most worried about having abortions.
On January 6th of 2021, you had tens of thousands of people peacefully protesting.
So, it's not a right-wing conspiracy theory. It's not QAnon. It's real.
I'm Rick Wilson, and this is The Enemies List.
Our guest today on the enemies list is Ron Filipkowski. You have followed and seen Ron on Twitter and other social media platforms because he is one of the great chroniclers with a fantastic eye for the craziness, the excesses, the weirdnesses, the mistakes, the corruption, the cruelty, and everything else of the Maga right. And Ron, thank you so much for joining us on the enemies list today. And I wanted to just catch up a little bit, see what you're covering, see what stories you're following right now. And talk a little bit about where you see the road ahead.
Well, right now is, of course, the Hunter Biden, James Comer, Jim Jordan fiasco with Devin Archer and all of that. I mean, Congress, This is a slow news week with Congress and recess.
An imaginary witness with nothing to say.
Yeah. So, yeah, they've already shifted their narrative on that story already today. They've come up with a new thing that they're selling.
One moment it was... He's the most important witness ever. The DOJ is trying to throw him in prison so he can't testify. And today it's suddenly like, Devin Archer, who? What? What are you talking about?
Yeah, the new spin is it doesn't really matter that they never discussed business. It just matters that he was able to get him on the phone. It's the access, I
don't know. Call me crazy, but if I call my dad, he's probably going to pick up.
I think that's an unusual thing for the Trump family, that a father would answer their son's calls.
That's crazy talk. What lavish corruption is this?
Yeah.
Well, I do think that they've been straining and struggling with this alleged Biden corruption investigation for the better part of 7 months now. I mean, do you see them actually like any sign they're going to change course on this or grow some shame or figure out it's just not working?
Well, here's what I can tell you. The activists and the influencer class and all that, they're getting pretty pissed off. They're getting very frustrated because they're not delivering the goods. They made all these big promises and Comer went on a meteor tour last year on all the right-wing podcasts, promising them, if we take the House, I'm going to be oversight chair and I'm going to take down Biden. And he wrote his mouth wrote a lot of checks that aren't being cashed right now.
that the facts can't cash.
Yeah. And you got people like Steve Bannon who have already turned on him and, already said, is starting to badmouth him and others. So, yeah, I think a lot of the people on the right wing are getting pretty upset.
I think that's probably right because, I mean, look, in politics, you famously want to under promise and over deliver, and it's hard to fulfill a campaign promise when it was based on fiction and a completely made up scandal. So, I mean, because they're going to lose that leg of their political stool very, very soon now. I think even Kevin is realizing, and I know actually was in communication with a Republican pollster 2 days ago who said, yeah, it's really not great. So,
well, he's got the problem of managing the crazies who are all pushing for impeachment, to start. So he's trying to placate them. At the same time, I think he knows that if they spend the next year on a ridiculous impeachment, that could cost him the House, could cost him his speakership. So this is the bet he made for himself.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the centerpieces of all this is that without Kevin McCarthy's permission and encouragement and latitude, none of these things would be going on.
Right.
They would be talking about some other issues. They'd be talking about some other aspects of what's going on. So to switch gears for just a minute, as a fellow Florida man, it seems like the great contest in the sky that we were all promised of Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump, Ron seems to be sort of fizzling out. But you still have to admit the guy provides some incredibly good weird video.
It's funny, you know, whenever I watch a DeSantis press conference, I have to watch it twice. I watch it the first time for the substance of what he's saying, and might clip some of that. But then I go back and just watch the mannerisms the second time.
Right.
I watch his hands, I watch his mouth, his nose, his hair, you know, because he really has some very strange mannerisms about him. And so sometimes I'll just put out a clip just on that. And oddly enough, well, probably not oddly enough, those clips are often more successful, you know, on social media than the substance. People love when you pick on him, you know.
Yeah, I mean, he's, you know, it's the thing though. It's like anytime you got a real bully, anytime you got somebody who's a real bully to other people who punches down, when they give you the opportunity to punch them, people really like that.
Yeah,
people really find that. And I you know, I put out an ad last week from our team over at Lincoln that was called Ron DeSantis's slave trade trade school, and his people. You know, I have a couple connections to that world. They're like, that's so unfair. That's so unfair. I'm like, dude, your guy's defending slavery. Trust me, you're going to get hit in the face when you're defending slavery.
I mean, and the letter that he put out last night was just so ridiculous. Like, you know, he challenging Kamala Harris and Randy Weingarten to come to Tallahassee and debate him about slavery. I mean, what is that? Where does that get him?
Trust me, they don't want to come here.
No, nobody wants to go to Tallahassee in the summer.
No, God, no.
But, you know, I don't understand how does that help him, number one, to keep that issue alive and to keep bringing it up? You should want it to go away. And number two, how does it benefit him to take on Kamala Harris right now? I mean, I'm not getting that.
You know, it really, I think we've reached that upper limit point where you realize that a campaign run by a guy who is not a great campaigner and his wife, who is a newscaster, when you're trying to scale that to a national campaign for president, you actually need trained professionals. You actually need people who can do who can do the things that they think they can do on their own, but can't. The guy is eminently punchable, but that fight seems like it's trailing off a little bit. It seems like Donald Trump's numbers are picking up. Are you looking forward to legal palooza with Trump? I mean, he's got to be producing there's got to be some amazing things that are going to come out of these with his temper tantrums and his behavior, right?
Yeah. I mean, that sort of makes I'm looking forward to that, of course. But on the one hand, I'm so plugged into the Trump's world and his orbit. And on the other hand, I'm a criminal defense lawyer and a former federal prosecutor. So it's like the two worlds are intersecting for me with these Trump prosecutions, right? You know, my day job and the rest of what I do. So yeah, that part's very interesting.
So let's talk about that for a second, because I think that is a truly unique perspective in a lot of ways, because if you were representing Donald Trump, you know, God forbid, all the things, you would be zealously trying to defend him. But no matter what, he's the worst client in the universe, right?
Oh,
I mean, it's like you'd want to fire the client because he will not shut his damn mouth.
You know, I get upset every time one of my clients in jail gets on the phone with his girlfriend, you know, because, you know, I don't know what's going to come out in that. And they do listen to those calls. And so the idea that Trump is going on national television talking about his cases, as a criminal defense lawyer, I'm just horrified, you know, just from that perspective. Like, it is the
but
worst
as an American,
thing
you're just like, bring it on, Donnie. Keep talking.
Well, because I'm picturing Jack Smith is going to be playing all these clips of all these different stories and versions. What you want to do as a defense lawyer is you want to find out all the evidence that the government has against you. What did they have first? Then we decide what our story is going to be. What defense are we going to go with after we've seen what they have? The problem with Trump is he's got out in front of discovery. He's already committed to several different defenses before he's even seen the evidence. It's the actual reverse of what you're supposed to do.
I presume a lot of this, the legal maneuvering that we're seeing, each one of these things is going to end up with Trump boiling over and saying more and more insanity, and more just like trying to reset the narrative of as these cases are closing in around him. It strikes me that his lack of discipline is legally and politically dangerous.
You know what I'm most looking forward to, Rick, is when he gets the discovery on the January 6th indictment, because what that's going to show him is how many people have testified against him from his own orbit. And that
they got that they got that on Tuesday the 31st, I guess it was, right?
What's that? No,
I think they were given discovery.
Oh, I'm talking about he hasn't even been indicted for January. I'm talking about January 6th.
Oh, for January 6th. Oh, yeah, right.
Because that's the one where all these people from his administration and from Congress have been brought in front of the grand jury, and
right.
So he doesn't exactly know what Mark Meadows has said to the grand jury yet, but he's going to find out. When that discovery hits, that's going to be like a bomb dropped on his head, because it's going to show him all the people that have been close to him who have turned on him. And I don't think we know even the tip of the iceberg about that.
Yeah. And I think his sense of betrayal is always, even if people say something, mildly critical,
right.
He thinks of them as traitors and wants to burn them to the ground, and thinks that they're the worst human beings to ever walk the earth, and six people on them like crazy. But some of these people will have taken deals, right? Some of these people will have given testimony in exchange for immunity and things like that, right? This can't go well.
I am absolutely convinced that Mark Meadows has completely sold out. And because, what the tip-off, it's two things were the tip-off to me. After Cassidy Hutchinson testified before the January 6th committee, Meadows went radio silent. He dropped out. He didn't do another interview for like 4 months. So that told me right there, if he was going to step up for Trump, he would have gone on TV, gone on Fox and denied some of what she said, but he didn't, because he knew that she had the goods on him. And if he contradicted her, he was going to get prosecuted. So he had to come clean at that. Once Cassidy flipped, that then flipped Meadows. And when Trump finds out what Meadows has said to the grand jury, he's going to lose his mind. He's going to come unglued.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. I think he's going to have a very, very bad day when he finds out that Mark Meadows has turned over text messages, documents, phone records, all the goods. Because I can tell you, Meadows doesn't have a lot of money personally. He's not poverty stricken, but he also can't go out and spend several $1 million defending himself against Jack Smith. It's not going to happen.
And he doesn't strike me as the kind of guy who would go to prison to protect Donald Trump.
Oh, I don't think the guy would run to the store to get a pack of cigarettes for Donald Trump. He's not a strong individual. Okay. He's not a guy with like rock ribbed moral character,
right? Not
a stand-up guy. So,
and we know
I think that
he'll talk. He was the leaker king, right? So
right.
He'll talk. We know that.
Yeah. I can tell you from direct knowledge, Mark was if not in the top 5 sources in the White House, in the top 3 for constantly trying to protect himself, for constantly trying to spin himself. To some reporters, I'm the source of stability. Without me, this would all fly apart, and it would be nothing but chaos and mad dogs and cannibalism. And to other people, he was, I hope the president isn't surrounded by those libtard cucks, because I'm the one conservative left. Right. It just that he is a truly morally vacant individual.
Yeah.
And has always been that guy. Everybody knows him. He's always been that guy. So as Trump starts to decompose and decompensate on some of these things, the legal jeopardy rises, the political jeopardy rises. what do you see as, because again, you are like a really careful observer of the right and the MAGA movement and their sort of particular flavor of idol worship and insanity and just weirdness. What do you see rising in their minds as Trump gets under more and more legal pressure?
Yeah, well, I've kind of said, like, I don't think it's going to be like a finger coming out of the dike and the dam breaking. It's more like the fraying of a carpet, where little pieces get chipped away of the base at little by little. I think you wrote this recently too. Something very similar that I read that I think you did in a thread. And I agreed with that. Yeah, you see the $40 million to the lawyers. I saw a lot of diehard MAGA Trump supporters grumbling and griping about that. The money for Melania's hairdo, all of these things. It is starting to wear on a lot of them for sure. The biggest problem is DeSantis hasn't presented a viable alternative yet for them to flee to. But what I'm hoping is that some of them lack enthusiasm, stay home, don't vote. Who knows?
That I think is something. Well, I can tell you for a fact. As we've said it, we think that Trump's weirdness and legal trouble and all the chaos right now, in many ways, will lead to an expansion of the number of Republicans who, while they don't want to say it publicly, while they don't want to come out and own it officially, a lot of them are going to stay home.
Yeah,
they may not vote for Joe Biden, and at this point, I'm okay with that too. If they don't cast a vote for Trump and just stay home or only vote down the rest of the ballot, I'm okay with that too. Because I do think this weirdly, it continues to although right up to the point where you mentioned about the money, because I do think that's caused a reaction. He solidified the Republican base last year and this year. The money's a bit of a problem, but I think that the dynamic of Trump being as strong as he is right now, still 50-50 in the polls with Biden, basically, will make him more reckless once he has the nomination. I think it'll make him more reckless, more crazy. And isn't that what the base kind of wants from him? Don't they want that, like, transgressive, screaming, throw him out, beat him up, all the sort of Trump classic from 16 and 20?
Well, and that's sort of the premise of my Twitter account, which is, all of the stuff that they love, I believe, turns off swing voters. And so
100%.
I want to put that out. I want to, like, when I clip all the people at the Trump rallies doing their interviews saying why they love Trump, I want swing voters to hear that these people are full QAnon, because it's sort of like shaming them. It's like, is this who you want to be with? Are these your party, your team? You want to be associated with these people? So
right and that question is something that I still think, and there's sort of a dispute in like the never Trump Republican world of how do you talk about the Republican base. Now I'm cut from sterner timber than a lot of people. A lot of people are like, they're economically anxious. They're just misunderstood. They're middle class. No, I think a lot of them they understand exactly what they're doing. They understand exactly the kind of behavior they're embracing. Because the other day, and I think you ran the clip, that guy on Right Side Broadcasting, he's like, what about the cucks and the rhinos and the shills and the libtards? And the guy's like, kill them all. And no one thought, I mean, they eventually kind of walked it back at the network level, but no one in that crowd surrounding this reporter was like, hey, that's too much, dude. Whoa, easy now. No one seems to like
that's
like a connection.
That happens a lot, and it's not rare.
So tell me about that. You see that a lot more than
it happens a lot. Yeah. And I'll tell you a little story there too, because Brian Glenn is the program director of Right Side Broadcasting, which is the network that did that interview. He's also Marjorie Taylor Greene's boyfriend, and
that's right.
That's right. He's the program director, and Alvarez is a guy that they hired to take his spot because Brian got promoted to program director. So Alvarez is taking Brian's spot. Brian follows me on Twitter, and I talk to him every week. I talk to Brian after every Trump rally. And
really?
Yes, I do. And so when that happened, I clipped it and posted it. Brian was backstage waiting to interview Trump, because he does a little 10-minute interview of Trump when he arrives.
Right.
So Brian saw my clip that I posted, saw that it was going viral, and Matthew was already done with his interviews. He was off air, and Brian grabbed him and threw him back on air to issue his retraction. So,
well, I mean, that idea that you've got somebody where, and I think I'm going to call bullshit on him for saying I couldn't hear what he was saying.
Right. He got caught.
No, he got caught. He was standing a foot away from the guy.
Yeah.
He was on mic. He heard exactly what he said. Yeah. He got caught. But that's not uncommon in these rallies and these Trump events. I mean, and I don't think that one was a particularly sort of perfect setup, perfect moment where he was kind of feeding him. He was kind of like throwing red meat to this guy as he says that we should kill them all.
Look,
I mean,
in 2016, Trump had everybody turn around and jeer the press people in the press box, lock her up, hang Mike Pence. Mm-hmm. These are the same people, all the QAnon crazies. They're all in that crowd. And I think one thing I try and chronicle is like people get so hung up on fighting over Trump's rally crowd size, whether there's a lot of people and he's obsessed with it. So I like to poke him by sometimes. But what I try to argue is don't get caught up in his crowd size, because it's almost all the same people. It's like the Grateful
it's kind
Dead.
of like this roving band of weirdo mutants that follow him around the country all the time. They're like, yes, we've got to drive 700 miles to the next Trump rally.
It's very rare now when someone will say, this is my first Trump rally, very rare. Yeah. So why are you worried about if 10,000 people showed up? 6,000 of them are the same people every rally, It's fascinating. It's like a crusade where they're marching through marching toward the Holy Land with Donald Trump. So that tendency to violence and the sort of extremism, do you think it's becoming more prevalent? I mean, the way I'm listening to Trump speeches, and I've been a careful anthropologist of the guy for a long time, he certainly seems like there's more of the real authoritarian instinct creeping out as the year goes on. And are you seeing more of that as well? Yeah, definitely. There's a big difference between now and 2020, for sure. And I think it's just the paranoia, the desperation, the fact that he holed himself up in Mar-a-Lago for like 2 years and almost never left Mar-a-Lago or Bedminster. He didn't go to the country at all. He didn't go around the country whatsoever. No. So I think that has all fostered, this paranoid thing. And he really views his followers as his shield between him and the justice system, that's his leverage to intimidate.
Well, when he said the other
judges.
day, if you do things to us, we're going to F you up so bad. Right. I mean, that's not because Donald Trump's going to go out and swing fists.
Yeah, it's all part of intimidating judges, intimidating prosecutors. I mean, you think about Eileen Cannon, she's down there in Fort Pierce, which is probably like one federal judge, maybe in Fort Pierce, the satellite office. I mean, and that's a GOP county that he won by a dozen points or so, solidly
62% or something like that.
Yeah, so she's under enormous pressure when he makes statements like that.
Well, don't you think though that, I mean, one thing I've tried to keep in check with our friends, on the left and in the Democratic Party is this will be the case that sinks Trump. This will be the thing that takes, because believe me, I used to think that same thing back in 2016 and 17.
Me too.
Oh, well, you can't call John McCain's not a war hero. That'll take him out. Grab him by the you-know-what. That'll take him out. And I'm concerned a lot of people who are excited about the legal cases are already picking out curtains in the White House for the second term when there's a very heavy race ahead of us. There's a very, very difficult political campaign ahead of us, right? This is not just because he's in trouble has not stopped him from winning before.
Well, and I don't know about you, but I talk to, moderate voters a lot, and swing voters
Sure.
and independents all the time. And I hear the same thing every time, which is Joe Biden's age, Joe Biden's age, cognitive decline, all of that. I mean, you just hear it over and over again that Democrats are somewhat in denial, I think, about how much that opinion holds with those voters. So what I hear from them all the time is, I hate Donald Trump, but Joe Biden's old and senile. So I think I would feel a lot more confident if we weren't running an 82-year-old incumbent with a 40% approval rating.
And here we are, I mean, that is the thing is, I talk to a lot of Democratic donors and activists, and I hear this a lot. It's like, why can't we have somebody different? Why can't we have Gavin? Why can't we have, Gretchen? Why can't? And the answer is because he can't. He's the president.
Yep.
It's how parties
It's up
work.
to him, right?
It's if he wants to go, he'll
That's
go.
it.
But he didn't want to go. And weirdly, I think just as in 2020, the one candidate in the Democratic field that Joe Biden or that Donald Trump couldn't beat was Joe Biden.
Right.
I mean, when we started the Lincoln Project, it's funny, we look back on it, talking about it the other day. When we started the Lincoln Project in December of 19, Bernie Sanders was way out ahead of the field.
Yeah.
Followed by Elizabeth Warren. And Joe Biden was in fifth on the day we started the Lincoln Project.
I will say this.
And we didn't know we'd end up where we're at. But when you get down to it, he really turned out to be the one guy who could really post up against Trump in the right tone and manner and style. I still happen to think that's true. I think changing horses now would be politically, a risk of global proportions.
I can tell you, like in 2016, I voted none of the above in the presidential race because of Hillary Clinton was the alternative. And I truly feel, and I think, and I heard her in an interview on Howard Stern say this after the campaign. She did not make any effort to reach out to people like you and me, to people like expat Republicans or people never Trumpers.
Right.
She felt she could win without us, and it didn't happen. And so I think if the Democratic Party had nominated Bernie Sanders, a lot of us would be in that same boat.
Trump would have won 44. Trump would have won 44 states.
Right. So the fact that Joe Biden was the nominee made it a lot easier for me to walk away from the Republican Party, and I think a lot of other, never Trumpers. So.
Yeah, and I think the way that Biden has focused on the economy, and he doesn't come across as ideologically hot. And he's had his own, and progressives have criticized him for not being progressive enough. I think he's sort of found the sweet spot right now in a lot of ways. And look, everybody says, oh, his numbers are so low. Folks, 40 is the new 60 in politics. We are so divided that a 40% approval rating for a president is really good. It's really good.
Well, the economy, I think the economy is going to be humming. The stock market is going way up. Now, inflation's coming down. Unemployment is fantastic.
Have you noticed that that percolating through with any of these Republican base voters, or is it still like that Fox News bubble, like inflation is down, why it's bad for Joe Biden?
Yeah, it's amazing. Like all the economic indicators are positive right now, except for interest rates, but that's being done for a reason. But everything else is positive. But yes, you never hear any of that on Fox or Newsmax. You would never hear how all you ever hear when the unemployment rate is low, they say, well, they're just all coming back in the workforce from COVID. Well, how long does that argument hold water?
Right.
It's been a couple years now.
It's been 2 years now.
These are new jobs that are being created. I think once the administration, which is building this, the campaign is building this massive war chest that they don't have to spend right now, unlike Trump. Once they unleash that and the ground game, which I think the Democrats' ground game is amazing. That's one thing that's really opened my eyes. Now that I'm a Democrat, is how good their ground game is.
It's really it's something they finally figured out, and they finally figured out the criticality of it, and I hope they've got it deploying into places where they really need it to be. because this will be an election, again, of very small numbers. It's a closely divided country. So we're not going to have easy, sweeping blowouts. And I think in places like Georgia, we're not going to have Reverend Warnock on the ballot again, which is a big driver. We're not going to have Donald Trump again saying, don't vote in the Senate runoff.
That was nice.
Our polling during that, we were like, damn, this is bad. It's not going to work. And then he comes out and goes, you shouldn't vote. And we were like, we'll just amplify that.
Or a Herschel Walker.
I mean, right. Jesus. So as you go forward and as we wrap up here, and thank you so much for your time today. You're going to be covering, obviously, a lot of the legal challenges ahead. The campaign as it unfolds. What else? What are the things are you looking for that we're not necessarily seeing in the same way that you would as somebody who's a real, deeply wired in observer of Trump and MAGA and the Trump movement?
I think that the Republican base is going to be so distracted by the presidential race that I really think that Democrats could take the House for sure, and even hold the Senate, which is going to be very difficult. I mean, there's so many tough races in the Senate this time around.
Very tough.
So many all over the place. Montana, Arizona. You could go all around the map. But I think that all the time and energy and money and resources that they're spending on the presidential race could really impact all of those races. So I'm actually really gearing up for a lot of these House and Senate races, and I'm looking forward to really engaging in those. And I think we have really good candidates too around the country in some of those key races.
I think there are some really good emergent candidates. In fact, I've got a show coming up in the next couple of weeks going through a lot of the potential and likely candidates coming up in the 24 cycle. Well, Ron Filipkowski, brother, thank you as always for joining us on the Enemies List and for your insights into where Trump's head is and where the head of the MAGA world is. And we look forward to having you back again as we go roll on into the chaos of the 2024 campaign.
Thanks again.
Today on the Enemies List is a name you might or might not be familiar with. Her name is Christina Pushaw. Christina Pushaw is the center of the weird alt-right, white gnat, bleeding, beating, throbbing heart of pure gristle that is the Ron DeSantis campaign. Now, Christina Pushaw loves to drag people on social media. She's got a whole little bot army, and she's got a bunch of scamfluencers and influencers and people around her that all want to be working in the DeSantis White House under Christina Pushaw, communications director. Well, Semaphore on Tuesday the 31st revealed that the laboratory inside of DeSantis World, the rapid response shop inside Ron DeSantis World, they revealed screen caps of signal messages with Pushaw talking about how they were going to push out both this egregious anti-LGBT video they put out and this white nationalist video that Nate Hochman produced. And it's no secret what she is and what she does. She calls anyone who disagrees with Ron DeSantis a pedophile and a groomer. You've heard this before. And she's created the strategy of the very online, very social media, meme-forward DeSantis campaign. And here's why she's on the enemies list. Because this is a person who is acting from a place of deep, deep hostility to America, including any American who's not exactly on her brand of white gnat. And if she wants to challenge me that she's a white nationalist, let's do it. Come on, Christina. Any old time you want to go at it. Because the things your campaign that is producing, the things you're doing, the things you're playing with, are all part of a very dark trend and tendency inside the MAGA Republican movement. You know exactly why you hired Nate Hochman and Will Chamberlain and the rest of these goons. You know exactly why you did it. Because you are trying to win this race by turning out and turning up the white gnats and the alt-righters and the 3%ers and the oath keepers and the Proud Boys and the Boogaloos and the rest of the flotsam and jetsam. It's why your guy and you have driven a media strategy where you've talked about the imaginary threat of drag queens 5,000 times, and somehow you're dead silent, or at least you allied over it with a sort of glance behind you when Nazis protest in front of synagogues in Florida, when the League of the South and the white nationalists are growing in this state faster than anywhere else in the country, when up to half of the employees of the Florida prison system have been identified as people who are in some way connected to white nationalist movements. So you're silent on those things, but we know who you are, Christina. And we know that the reason he's dug in on the slavery stuff is you. And that's why you are on the enemies list. Thanks again for listening to the enemies list. If you have any comments, questions, or if there's someone you'd like to hear on the podcast, hit me up on Twitter at @TheRickWilson. Thanks again for the wonderful support you've shown the pod. We're growing fast. It really helps if you will share this with your friends, your family, and anyone else who, like us, is trying to save democracy. While you're at it, if you could rate and review the podcast, I would be very much appreciative. I know this is the sort of thing you've heard a billion times. Please rate, review, like, blah, blah, blah. But you need to do it. It really does help us a lot. We are slaves to the algorithm, my friends. And if you do this, it will help get the pod out further. Anyway, thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time. And remember, whatever you do, stay off the list.